Welcome back, everybody, to JayMovieTalk. This is episode 354. Here I am talking about the Final Destination franchise. But before we get into all of that, let's go back to last week's episode. Last week's episode, where I talked about my favorite horror filmmaker of all time, the one and only Mr. John Carpenter. Kind of talked a bit about his career, and then, of course, talked a little bit about the movie The Thing. And everything. Appreciate everybody who listened to that episode. I very much appreciate that, and thank you for interacting with me with the polls and everything on Mr. John Carpenter. Who knows? Maybe at some point again, I will talk about Mr. Carpenter in depth once again, because one thing about my podcast, when it comes to John Carpenter, I always find time to talk about him and his films. And who's to say that before this year is out, I might not talk about another John Carpenter film. They live. But anyway, that is, last week's episode, and everything. But let's get into this week's episode. So this week, as I talked about, and as you heard from the opener, and everything, where I'm going to be talking about the Final Destination franchise, a franchise that has been around since the year 2000. So this franchise is 25 years old. 25 years old. So the first movie started when I was just entering high school. So yeah, that kind of tells you a little something, right? But but what I'm going to do with this episode, I'm going to do my own personal ranking of the franchise. I already posted my own personal ranking over on my letterbox, and everything. And so here I am just going to be officially talking about my ranking and why I put the movies in the order that I put them and everything. But one of the biggest things about this franchise, aside from the fact that you get all these kills and everything like that, is Tony Todd. The late great Tony Todd, now, who unfortunately passed away not too long after, he finished up with the newest film, Bloodlines, and everything. And I'll talk about him a little bit more when I get to talking about Bloodline, and everything. But I mean, he was a horror icon. He wasn't just an acting icon. He was a horror icon. I should say he wasn't just a horror icon. He was an acting icon. And the fact that he still to this day is the only through and through, I would say, true, like, black horror icon, and everything. Yeah, you've had other, black actors and actresses, show up in horror films, but still to this day, he's the only, like, true icon. You put him up there with the Robert Englunds of the world, with the Kane Hodder's, with, hell, even Tobin Bell with Jigsaw. You put him, he's definitely much up there with them. And his character of Candyman, is right up there with the Freddys, the Jasons, the Michael Myers, the Leatherfaces, the Jigsaws, right? He's right up there with them. And hey, like I said, there's always going to be a soft spot in my heart for him as an actor and for that character. And I'm sure that a lot of people who fans of his feel the same way, and was very much happy with his presence throughout this franchise, because having him a part of this franchise kind of always added just a little bit more gravitas, a little bit more depth, to this franchise. And for years, it's always been like this running thing of whether or not he was actual death, in a sense, but or he could have been the devil. We never know, especially with the last name Bloodworth, and everything. But yeah, I mean, he very much added a lot to this franchise. So let's get into talking about my actual rankings, and everything. So my criteria basically was off of entertainment, off of the characters, as far as me having some type of, like, true connection to the characters, to a degree, like where I feel for the characters, the main characters at least, and I actually want them to succeed to a degree, and also the kills. So that is pretty much what my criteria was for why I ranked the films the way I do, and everything. So let's get into the ranking. So coming in at number 6 is actually Final Destination Bloodlines. As I talked about on the last episode, I said, yeah, well, by the time I get ready to do this episode, I will have watched the newest film, which I did. It's streaming on HBO Max, so I actually got a chance to watch it and everything like that. And it was somewhat of a bittersweet thing, because the reason why I did not see this movie at the movie theater was for the simple fact of this was Tony Todd's final performance. And I know a lot of people are more so, if it's someone's final performance and they are like big fans of these people, they make sure they go and see them. Where in my case, especially when it comes to people who, like I said, that I grew up watching, I kind of don't always like to watch their final performance, because it feels like it is truly the end in a lot of ways. And yeah, I just didn't want to see his final performance, but I did know of his, scene in the speech that he gives, and everything like that, which I will say that was a very nice thing for the filmmakers to allow him in character to say his basically final goodbyes to everyone and his fans and everything. And I thought that was very nice of them to do that. And I mean, who better than someone like a Tony Todd to be given that opportunity to, say goodbye, basically. Yeah, and like I say, it is a touching scene. It almost kind of takes you out of the movie in a way, because like I say, you're not watching you don't see the character of Bloodworth so much. You just see Tony Todd, really, and everything. But I thought that was a very nice, touching thing that they did for him in this movie. And also, they basically let us know, like, no, he's not actually death, or he's not the devil. He was actually a kid at the very beginning, and his life was saved, even though he was not supposed to be there. That is why death never actually came for him. But it's like, I guess he got an obsession along with Iris, as far as, the whole thing about death and his design and everything. And that's why people would always come to him for advice. And a lot of times the people wouldn't listen, and everything, henceforth why they end up dead, or, like Alex, getting taken out by a freaking brick. But that's a whole nother story. My first impressions of this movie, basically was that, I mean, it was cool to get another Final Destination movie. I was more impressed with, I would say, the first part of the movie, dealing with Iris and them, and everything, and that whole sequence, up in the sky and all that. And that's the thing, basically got destroyed all around him, and Iris just trying to fight to survive, basically. And the fact that the little kid is there, and I was like, oh, that's Bloodworth, because damn it, the hell, he was dressed just like how Bloodworth was dressed and everything, throughout, with the whole suspenders and everything. I was like, oh, I know this Bloodworth. So, but I was more invested with that. When we got to like the current day stuff and dealing with the family and how everything played, it's like, I really did not like those characters. I don't know how anybody else felt, but I really did not like any of these characters in this movie. And I kind of didn't feel bad for what was happening to them, for the most part. And the fact that Iris, as an older woman who had managed to, seclude herself away from the world, from death, she never came outside and everything. And how was she able to evade death for all these decades? And then when her granddaughter comes to see her, it's like, Yep, well, this is where I got you, and this is how you die. And it's like, what? And even with Iris's daughter, Darlene, like, she's the mom. She knew all about this, but even with her, like, when things was starting to, happen, everything, it's like she didn't fully want to believe and invest. And it's like, huh? It's like this isn't making sense to me. Um, as far as the kills go, I will say that, I mean, there were a few creative kills. I mean, probably the best one is in the hospital with the two brothers when they go in the room, and because it's basically, oh well, because the younger brother has the peanut allergy, so basically have him eat a bunch of peanuts, he dies, and then they bring him back to life, which would basically, stop death's design of coming for the family at this point. But death had, other, things in mind for that, and the both brothers get taken out in that damn room because of the freaking chamber activates and becomes like a freaking black hole to a degree from metal, and the freak that Eric has all this metal in him, and he gets sucked into the thing with the wheelchair on his back, and then he gets bent backwards, almost kind of like uh, how Megan's dad get killed in Friday the 13th part 6 when Jason breaks his back. It's kind of one of those type of situations. I will say that's probably like the best kill in the movie, but overall, I mean, it was an entertaining movie, but I don't know, I didn't have that investment in those characters like that. I wanted to see more of Iris, especially in current day, or even have her daughter kind of, Darlene, kind of be more, you know, vocal and more involved with what was going on. But it's like they played more into the whole thing of, oh well, you left me as a child and you wasn't around. But it's like, okay, what was she doing out there for all those years? Like, okay, she left her family, but what was she doing? She was just driving around in a freaking RV, living in a van down by the river, basically. It's like, I don't know. It just, the movie just kind of, like I said, I felt like it was, I don't want to say it was weak, but it just didn't have the same as some of the other movies did. So that's why it kind of comes in at number 6 and everything. So coming in at number 5 is The Final Destination, which is part 4, which came out in 2009. This one, I mean, it's in 3D. It's the whole thing with the racetrack and everything like that. This is actually the one that I don't really go back and watch as often. I mean, I don't have too much of a problem with it, but it's not one of my favorites. And it's only coming in at number 5 simply because of the fact that the way that racetrack disaster, unfolds and everything, it just gives it a little bit more impact than what Bloodlines did. Now, I could watch Bloodline again and those two could flip, but I don't think either one of those would go higher than 5 and everything. And I mean, the movie, it had some good ideas, but it just, for me, it doesn't feel like what we were used to with the franchise. And I think that's one reason why this movie, like, at this point, it was almost like, okay, we kind of need to retcon or repackage some stuff. I think that's the reason why with part 5 you get, the whole thing that happens, which I'll talk about that when I talk about that film. But this movie, like, coming off the heels of part 3, I guess you was thinking that we were going to go bigger or whatever, but it didn't feel like it did. It felt like it kind of regressed in a way, and everything. So yeah, that's the reason why that one comes in at number 5. Coming in at number 4 is actually Final Destination 5, which was the last film up until Bloodlines. I have a lot of fun with this movie. Even though there's like a darker tone to it, it's like death is almost kind of angry with these people, and everything. But I mean, that bridge scene is always insane. Like them trying to survive to get on, as this bridge is crumbling around them and everyone's trying to, survive. And what's his name? I always forget his freaking name, but dude is always in a bunch of movies and TV shows where he gets that damn tar oil like splashed on his face. It's like, oh, Jesus, and everything. But I mean, I have a lot of, like I said, I have a lot of fun with this movie because of the fact that I feel like there's a lot of dark humor in this movie. In particular and I think the scene that stands out for me is the scene when Sam and I always forget the girl's name, played by Emma Bell, when they go to see Texas Battles character, I forget his name too sometimes, when they go to see him when he's at the gym and he's working out, and that whole scene is like insanity to me, because you got some dudes just kind of raging out on the weights and everything, and just and all this type of stuff. It's like, what the hell is going on here? And how like it's almost set up like a domino effect, and it's like it just takes one little thing to knock something over here, this, that, and third, and you get a whole, booby trap, or Indiana Jones booby trap thing kind of unfolds. But I enjoy the fake out in the sense of you think that he's gonna die because the two swords come down behind him, and it's like, no, you good. But not realizing that the sword cut the cables to the weights that he was lifting. So as soon as he lift them up, the damn weights come crashing down on his head. And the fact that Sam and the girl, they leave, and it's like they basically had to change clothes because they got blood all over them. It's like it's just ridiculous in a sense. But I think the biggest thing about this movie is when you get to the finale and you thinking that, oh, they survive, they managed to cheat death, they getting on a flight because they're going to Paris. And then you realize, wait a minute, they're on flight 180. This is actually a prequel to the very first movie, and it shows where Alex and everybody's getting kicked off the plane, and then the plane takes off and it explodes. And it's like, wow, it's like it's a whole full circle moment. So even though it comes in at number 4, but like I said, I have a lot of fun with the movie. And like I said, you do kind of feel a little bit for Sam and everything, because again, he's the one that saw everything, right? And everything. He was a pretty decent character. I mean, he's no Alex, but he was a decent enough character. And I thought you did want to see them somewhat succeed, at least, even though you kind of feel like they ain't gonna succeed, but you root for these people. And I think that's the reason why with Bloodlines, I didn't find myself rooting for anybody, and everything. Coming in at number 3 is actually number 3. Here, this is the one, of course, with the roller coaster. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's one of my favorite actresses and everything. And this was around the time when she was doing quite a bit of horror stuff and everything, because a year later she would do Death Proof, and then a few years later she would do the prequel to The Thing. And it's kind of funny how she kind of pivoted away from like doing horror into doing like action with Birds of Prey and Kate, and everything. And I would love to see her actually do like a action horror type movie, because I feel like she could pull that off to a degree. But this one, of course, like I say, the roller coaster, which, I mean, if you were someone who had a fear of roller coasters and you watched this movie, it would definitely completely turn you off to roller coasters. Majority of the cast here, they're fine, and everything. But the one dude that worked at the it looked like the Home Depot or whatever, him and his girlfriend, he pissed me the hell off for most of this movie, because he didn't want to listen when they're trying to tell him like what's going to happen. It's like, you don't believe anything. And then when his girlfriend gets killed in the damn warehouse and everything, all of a sudden it becomes the main character's fault. And it's like, wait a minute, we were trying to warn you, and now it's our fault. And how basically, like, look, if everybody stay the hell away from me, everybody, we'll be fine. But everybody around everybody is like, death is like, oh, so y'all meeting up? All right, so I guess who's ever next I got to take y'all out. I would say this: the tanning bed in this one, is that scene, like I say, Death has a sixth sense of humor. And the fact that he kills the two girls in the tanning bed, and then they actually have a 2-for-1 special funeral where they go from the overhead shot of the burning tanning beds, then it cuts to the overhead shot of the funeral where they laying in the positions that they were in. It's like, yeah, that's a sick, like that's kind of a sick, twisted, humorous thing to do. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I think she was a strong lead. She's one of the better main characters in this franchise, I feel like. And unfortunately, in the end, Death always gets what he wants, right? So yeah, that's why that one comes in at number 3. So coming in at number 2, and this might actually kind of surprise people, I actually have Final Destination, the original film, at number 2. Of course, it launched the whole franchise and everything, and it introduced Death in a different way of where in other movies we've seen Death, which I'll talk about it because that's one of the little side topics I'm going to talk about after I go through the ranking. But we always seen Death in a different way in movies before this, but here Death is actually the true villain, and we've never seen that before. Like Death, as the villain of the movie, and it's an unseen version of Death. It's just, he's just kind of manipulating from the shadows. But and I thought it was interesting too, like how Death is a character, but it's an unseen character. You never see Death. There's no physical manifestation of Death, in these movies, but you definitely see him at work, right? And everything, which I thought was a cool concept. And the whole thing with, the plane, in Flight 180, which ironically that the original idea for this movie was to be an episode of the X-Files, which I guess that's why the whole thing with the FBI agents and everything. And I would say they were kind of weird in the sense of the two FBI agents. They was kind of weird, like especially how they were trying to blame Alex for everything. And it's like, how did he mastermind? Oh, we gonna get kicked off the plane, on purpose, and then when the plane take off, it's gonna blow up, and that was my whole plan. And it's like, how did he seem like this? Like he was a freaking teenager. He was in high school. How the hell was he gonna come up with some master plan to do that? But they kept making it seem like it was his idea. And I would say this: they weren't really a friend group. They just became, like a group of people who were survivors that had to stick together basically to try to cheat Death. And of course they unfortunately don't, and everything, which I thought was kind of cool, like how the whole premise of these people, they were not friends, because the whole reason why Alex and everyone that got off the plane is because him and what the hell is this character's name? But Curtis Smith, how they got into this big fight and everything, because Alex has the premonition about, the plane blowing up, and he didn't like his Carter, that was his name. How they got into it, and then they end up fighting off the plane. But then it's like they kind of stick together, and it's like, oh, you some type of whatever. I forgot exactly what Carter said to him when they was there talking, and his girlfriend, he's like, she get all pissy or whatever, and then she steps out in the street and get smacked by that bus, which I will always say that's like one of the best kills of the franchise, for the simple fact that they don't foreshadow it at all, because you don't even hear a bus coming. So it's like, does this bus like literally appear out of literal thin air? Because a city bus is loud as hell. So for her to step off the street and get smacked by that bus, it's like, it just snuck up on me out of nowhere, type of thing. But and it's also kind of funny seeing Sean William Scott play kind of like the doofy character in this, because I've always had the theory that even though this movie comes out after American Pie, but I feel like it was filmed before American Pie, and the fact that Sean William Scott in American Pie could easily be like the Carter character, but seeing him in this is kind of weird because like he's just the little geeky kid, and he didn't. And it do kind of suck that he dies in the way that he dies. But he was just so like innocent and everything opposed to everybody else. I mean, Alice is kind of like all over the place, and then you got Clear, which. Why is her name Clear? Because for years people have always thought her name was Claire, but when you find out that her name is Clear Rivers. Okay, I'm gonna let that sit with y'all. Her name was Clear Rivers. Okay, but I don't know. Like I said, this group, like I say, they the ones that kicked it off. So you do kind of have some type of connection, because generally with the original, group, you always kind of feel a little something for them, like the original friend group in Nightmare on Elm Street or the original friend group in Halloween. You feel for those type of characters, even whether or not you really like those characters, not because they are the originals. They're like the architects of what you would kind of get glimpses of through other characters as the franchise kind of goes along, to a degree. So yeah, that's why that comes in at number 2. Coming in at number 1, if you haven't already noticed, is number 2. Now, as much as I enjoy the first movie, I enjoy Final Destination Part 2 probably the most. It's probably the one I rewatched the most also. For one, that pile up on the freeway is like one on the highway, I should say, is probably like one of the best, if not the best, and probably the most memorable, iconic scene of the franchise. I mean, with everybody being taken out, and they're not just taken out in, just, oh, we gonna get them out of there quick type. No, everyone suffers in that premonition that Kimberly has on the highway. Everyone suffers. You got the one dude, I think Eric, who's who's riding in the convertible. He is, not only does he get trapped in the car and he's on fire, but you have this 18-wheeler that just comes, almost like the semi truck from Duel, that's just like the shark and Jaws, right? It just come crashing through the flames and it destroys the hell out of him. What's his name? The character that T.K. Carter plays. T.C. Carson, I'm sorry. T.K. Carter, that's Knowles from The Thing. I still got John Carpenter on the brain. But no, his character, because he's riding that motorcycle and he gets flipped and gets, taken out, right? He suffers. The other dude, the one that's driving in the car sniffing cocaine, which is still insane to me, he suffers pretty damn bad too. I don't think nobody gets it worse than the deputy, because he's riding behind that log truck, and when them logs start rumbling and it literally goes through, it just destroys his head, and everything. And then even Kimberly and her friends, they suffer because, again, they're flipped over and they're watching, like, as everyone is like getting taken out around them, and Kimberly is struggling trying to get free, but the truck comes smashing to her, and then that's when she comes to, because she's waiting her turn to go onto the freeway, and then of course she stops, and the deputy stops her, like, okay, what's going on here? And she's like, no, something gonna happen, and then it actually does happen, and her friends end up still getting killed, but she don't, and everybody else in line don't, and then that's when everything happens from there. I will say that. And also too, probably like the most unintentional funniest scene is from this movie, and that is the crash out scene that T.C. Carson, I'm sorry, has, where he's like, I'm in control of my life, in my life, and everything, and he has the gun. It's like, what the hell, you got a gun? Like, what's a gun gonna do? And everything like this. But that's like one of the unintentional funniest moments of the entire franchise. But what I liked about the second movie is that I would say it kind of improves upon a lot of the stuff from the first movie. Like, everything that makes the first movie great, this one I feel like adds a level to it. and everything. And also too, the group of survivors here, you actually feel something for, at least, well, some of them. I mean, Eric, he got what he deserved, because for one, how the hell did he get that money so doggone fast? Because apparently that all happened that morning, so he already got paid, like I guess like a survivor's fee or something like that, severance or whatever. And he didn't bought I think it was a Super Bowl ring or some nonsense, but he just bought a whole bunch of crap. And then he goes into his apartment. The man just living filthy, because first of all, why does he need to take his shirt off to cook? And then he takes the pot of spaghetti that he had, old spaghetti, and he just takes it and tosses it out the window. And granted, that comes back to bite his ass, right? But it's like I said, a few of these characters, they get what they deserve. Buddy, that was the cocaine dude, he got to get what he deserved when he gets sliced in half out there in the field. Now the one girl that smoking all the time, I don't think she kind of deserved to go out like that by a freaking airbag, but hey, it is what it is. But also too, this movie showed that Death has a sick sense of humor too, because he literally does to Clear what he would do to Iris years later, and that was basically lure her out. Is like, oh, you back in the world, okay? So I'm gonna take you out via another character. It's gonna be a 2-for-1 special in the hospital, type of thing. But yeah, like I said, I just enjoy this movie a lot. I feel like when I think about the Final Destination franchise, I really think about this movie. This movie always comes to me first when I think about it. So, yeah. So that's how I rank the films. I would love to know what you guys think about my ranking, or what also is your ranking and everything. So if you are listening on YouTube, definitely comment down below what your personal ranking of the franchise is, what you think of my personal ranking of the franchise also, and everything. And we can talk about it, right? I will talk more about Tony Todd for a second, because like I say, he is the mysterious link throughout the franchise, because in the first movie, they go to see him, and that's when we get the whole iconic I see you soon, and because he's there in the first movie to lay out the rules for how death operates, and whether Alex, he listens to it or not, that's up to him. And then he said basically like, well, if you don't, I see you soon. But my favorite line from that scene is him saying, and you don't want to mess with that Mac Daddy, and everything. Because it's like, wait, that's kind of Candyman-ish right there, but okay, whatever. But I like how he, is the connecting thread throughout the films, because we get him in the first movie. Now in the second movie, he's kind of interesting because he was very excited to see Clear when they come to visit him. I guess he was surprised that she was still alive, because he's like, oh, Clear, how are you? And everything. When he literally he walked out of hell when he came out of that damn freezer. But that's a whole nother story. And he again tries to warn Clear, and unfortunately she gets taken out. So it kind of goes back to what he says in Bloodline, like, people been coming to me for years for advice. And make sure who else has come to him for advice, and everything. But I've always enjoyed Bloodworth, and everything. Granted, he doesn't actually show up in the third one, but he is the voice of the devil at the fair, which I think is where the whole theory about him being the devil came about. And then in this last movie, Bloodlines, how we get his backstory to a degree of how he was not supposed to be, there that night, and he was saved, but Iris came looking for him, but it come to turn out that he wasn't, a part of Death's design to die at all there once Death started picking off all of the people families who did survive, because by virtue, if they were supposed to die that night and they didn't, they went on to have families, and then they would go on to have families. Like death just literally started picking through these people, which brings me to a theory that I have, that what if all the people from the first 5 movies are related to people who survived that original, death, thing in Bloodlines with Iris. Like that, I think that would make it make more sense to a degree. But then you would kind of be like, well, no, because if that was the case, death would have came for their parents before it came for them. But still, it's kind of it's still kind of a thing to kind of think about. Like once Bloodlines kind of introduced that, it's like, oh well, maybe Alex is related to such and such, and maybe Clear was related to such and such, or maybe Sam, or maybe Kim, you never know. I don't know. It's just one of the things I kind of think about. And then also too, like how this franchise influenced other horror movies that would come later. I mean, the whole thing with the traps and everything. You could say that Final Destination is an influence on the Saw films to a degree, because we're talking about traps and like how everything, just kind of takes something and repackage it. And the fact that James Wong, was involved with this franchise as well as the Saw franchise also. So yeah, I mean, you can see like a little bit of influence there as well. So let's talk about death as a villain, as a concept, because again, like I said earlier, this is the first time we've ever seen death like this in a movie. I think the most popular versions of seeing death in movies is, in Bill and Ted movie with William Sadler playing Death. He's more like a sidekick, but he's like a funny, quirky sidekick, Death like hanging out with Bill and Ted and everything. And then also too, you get Meet Joe Black, aka Death takes a vacation to find love via Brad Pitt, right? So those are like physical versions that we get of Death, and he's not operating necessarily as what Death is supposed to be, for different reasons, and everything. Here is like, no, Death is very much what his name is. He's Death, and you don't cheat me, because when you cheat me, then I'm going to come back for you tenfold, and I'm basically going to like just sit back and just ha 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 as you fall right into my traps, which is what pretty much all the characters do throughout the Final Destination franchise. They literally like fall into his traps and everything. And the fact that one thing about these movies too is that everyone pretty much tries to fight to survive, but they all die in the end. And whether we see it like we do with Clear in part 2, even though she was the sole survivor of part 1, once we get to part 2, because we find out that Alex died, trying to avoid death. And the fact that he gets taken out by a brick, I think is like the most atrocious thing, because the character deserved better than that. But I forgot there was an issue or something like that, where something about Devin Sawa regarding like coming back and everything. So it's like, oh, okay, well, screw it. We're just gonna have him get murdered by a brick, and everything. But yeah, everyone dies. No one survives, and I think that makes it even more of a stronger, thing, because no matter what, we all die in the end. Now, how we die, that's no one truly knows, like the day or the time or whatever. But in the end, everyone dies. And I think that's kind of like the overarching thing of this franchise, is like these people, they try to fight so hard to live, but in the end, they still die, and everything. And then let's talk about the most creative deaths in horror. I mean, this franchise has some great deaths. I've talked about a few of the deaths throughout this episode. So let's talk about I would say my top 3 deaths. Number 3, I probably would say The tanning bed. That would be number 3, because I mean, a lot of people go to get tans, and then you end up getting trapped in this freaking thing, and then it, because a drink gets spilled and things short circuits, and next thing you know, you getting turned darker than you wanting to be turned, right? So that's a whole thing. But and the fact that those girls went through they were tortured. I mean, they literally burned to death, which it sucks. But I mean, as far as a kill in the movie, I think it is very much up there for me. Number 2, I would probably say, number 2. Let's see, what would number 2 be? Oh no, I got to think about this for a second, because I know what number 1 is going to be. But number 2, let's go with Texas Battle's character from part 3, because like I say, death pretty much, like I say, that was a very good fake out. Like I say, there was all that insanity going on in that gym and everything, but the fact that we fake it out with the 2 swords, coming down behind him, and then when he lift those weights up and it just crushes his head, and it's like, oh shit, and everything. But number 1 would probably be from part 1, and that would probably be when Alex's friend gets taken out, in the bathroom. Because if you didn't know any better, you'd swear like, damn, they really killed this dude for real. Because the way it was done, and the fact that Death made it look like he hung himself in the bathtub. And we know he didn't hang himself, but that's what his parents thought. And even Alex is like, there's no way he committed suicide and everything like that. But it was because his brother, died on the plane and everything. So, he was feeling so hurt that he wanted to die also. And like I said, that's this Death's kind of dark, twisted sense of humor. But when you compare like the deaths from here into, with other like horror franchises, like the Saw films, even the Nightmare on Elm Street, because Freddy, he kills those teens in some creative ways also. I would even say some of the kills in the Friday the 13th movies also. Jason, he's very interesting. He's a very interesting killer. Michael Myers, I wouldn't necessarily, because Michael Myers, he likes to stalk, and he likes to do the whole stalker thing. So I wouldn't necessarily say it. Jason, he likes to kind of play with his food a little bit before he kills you. And I think that's kind of the difference between Jason and Michael's, where Michael he plays with you, but he does it more in a kind of creepy, stalkerish manner. Whereas Jason, no, he's more like, no, I'm going to play with my food before I eat it, basically, type of thing. Because he's like, oh, you think you're going to get away? No, you ain't, type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I would put like the kills from this franchise up there with those other franchises as far as kills. So I will ask you guys, the listeners, again, listen on YouTube, definitely comment this down below. Everyone else, you can hit me up on socials, whether it's over on YouTube, on Threads or whatever, because I am going to be posting some of these as thread topics and everything like that. So the question is, what is your favorite death scene? Doesn't have to be necessarily from the Final Destination franchise. It can be from any horror movie. What is your favorite death scene and everything? So one more topic before I get out of here. The legacy of this franchise. Final Destination, I mean, pretty much helped shape what the early 2000s horror, was. I mean, you had a lot of what they refer to as the WB cast, in these movies, type of thing. Whether they were actually on WB shows or if they just kind of looked like they should have been on a WB show. Granted, you did have a few people that were on WB shows show up throughout the Final Destination franchise and everything. And then also too, like how it is very much ingrained into pop culture. Even if you're someone who's not really too into the Final Destination movies, hell, everyone knows about, hey, I don't drive behind a log truck. You seen that movie scene? And they refer to what happened in Final Destination 2, right? So it's very much a part of pop culture. And like I say, it's a long-standing franchise. Here we are in year 25 of existence of this franchise, and we just had the 6th film. So the fact that you have 6 films in 25 years, that's a testament of longevity, and also too that they're not like trying to force the franchise so much onto you. Because like I say, it was what, 14 years in between the last movie and this movie that just came out. So 14 years went by. And I think we're going to be getting another one, I think in the next 2 years or something like that. And it's going to be interesting to have a Final Destination movie without Tony Todd being a part of it. But, I mean, the franchise, the franchise still has some life to it, so they're going to continue it, and everything. And the fact that people still talk about this movie, 20 plus years later, and everything, which just says the impact that it has on the horror genre, and everything. And like I said, it's one of the more successful and more entertaining franchises. And even if I have mixed feelings about Bloodlines, but at least they still show that they are creative. They're trying to be creative and keep people invested in the franchise at least. So, who is your favorite main character of the franchise? Not necessarily a supporting character, but like main character of each movie, and everything. So definitely watching on YouTube, comment down below. Well, I should say listening on YouTube. You're listening to it on YouTube. Comment down below who's your favorite character of the franchise and everything. And yeah, like I said, it'd be interesting. I definitely want to see what other people rankings of this is. So definitely let me know. Or I would say this on Threads, when I post this question, and you're listening to this episode, but I will ask it. I will ask people to drop their letterbox on the thread and everything, so I can check out your ranking. Or you can even like take a screenshot, or whatever, and post your ranking of the Final Destination franchise and everything like that. So that is kind of almost, well, I would say that is almost it for this episode. But I will say this: let's recap basically my rankings of the franchise. So number 6 is Bloodlines. Number 5 is The Final Destination. Number 4 is Final Destination 5. Number 3, Final Destination 3. Number 2, Final Destination. And the number 1 spot is Final Destination Part 2. So that is my ranking of the franchise. And the key takeaways is that you don't want to mess with that Mac Daddy. And also, to paraphrase Tony Todd's last lines, also would be, life is precious and you should, spend it doing what you love, basically. And if death is on your back, well, good luck. So that's me kind of paraphrasing, kind of reworking what he said there, and everything. Next week's episode, next week's episode is going to be fun. I'm going to be getting back to actually doing a movie review. Next week we're going back to doing a full review, and I'm going to continue talking about one Mr. Tony Todd, because I will be talking about the original Candyman film starring Tony Todd, Virginia Madsen, and everything. Going back to Cabrini Green, revisit that. Also might talk a little bit about the 2021 version directed by Nia DaCosta and everything, just to kind of compare and contrast with Candyman, but mainly focus on the original Candyman. So that will be episode 355 and everything. And everything or whatever. But so yeah, definitely be on the lookout for that, as well as some questions that I will have up throughout the week and everything like that. So again, before I get out of here, I will ask you guys again, comment if you're listening on YouTube. What is your favorite Final Destination movie? and also your favorite death from that movie. So like in my case, since Final Destination 2 is my favorite death from that movie is actually who's my favorite death from part 2? No, it's not. I don't actually really have a favorite death because, like I say, that pile up where you see everyone die is kind of a favorite of is actually my favorite. So I guess the premonition is my favorite death where everyone dies basically because I mean in the end everyone does die, right? But yeah, the premonition is actually my favorite of the franchise of Final Destination Part 2. And everything. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this episode. I want to thank everyone for listening. You can follow me on social media. I mean, I'm still on the Twitter X machine. I don't comment at all over there, but if someone happens to, say something to me over there, I will reply, respond, or anything. I haven't been like posting or uploading anything regarding the podcast or even just talking about anything over on X because I've pretty much moved over to the Threads. Threads is a better version. I feel like the people that I interact with on Threads are a lot better than the ones that was on X, and everything. There's a sense more of you can find your niche a little bit better, with the people that you want to engage with, or anything like that. I feel like it's a little bit better on Threads. So at least with the people that I surround myself with over there on Threads. Now other people it might be a little different, but for me, I found like the people that I really like to engage with and everything like that, and people they are receptive and everything. We have some pretty cool interaction over there. So you can follow me on Threads at the J Giles. Instagram personal page is the J Giles. Also, the movie Instagram is JMT Podcast, and everything. Of course, you can find all the J Movie Talk episodes are part of the TV Zone Podcast Network. Wherever you listen to your podcast at, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, whatever you want to call it, Good Pods. We are everywhere. Just type in TV Zone Podcast Network and you'll find Movie Talk as well as the Three It Out Podcast, the Grand Slam Podcast, the Frodo Podcast. Also, and everything. And then, of course, if you just listen to Movie Talk, you can find me on YouTube as well. Have the whole YouTube channel. Have some shorts that the short form content is coming sporadic because someone that's been doing long form for so long, I kind of forget to do the short stuff. So yeah, I'm trying to get more into uploading like the short content and everything. So from a lot of episodes, I'm trying to do more short form content. Hence why you start to notice me doing the little quick side topics that I do for each episode, because those are like some of the stuff like that that I'm trying to do for short form stuff. And also be on the lookout for some what I like to refer to as my B-sides. Those are coming because I'm into music and everything. So if you listen to records, you have an A-side and a B-side. So I'm going to have some B-sides. I probably will have a B-side for this episode. Well, maybe one or two for this episode that will coming along. Also, yeah, thank you everybody for listening. I will be back for episode 355 as I will be talking about Candyman. So until next time, peace.